Hello, this is my video essay for Unit 50 for P1 and P2. For this video essay, I'll be going over the purposes and the meaning of each of the following: a sound effect, an atmospheric sound, a piece of music which has an original score, and one piece of dialogue. I will also be going over how they were all produced. The first of the four I'll be analysing is the sound effect, and the film I've chosen the sound effect from is Toy Story. The actual sound effect I've chosen is the licking sound that Bucky the Horse makes. This sound effect is quite important as Bucky the Horse tends to lick Woody in excitement, thus this effect being majorly important throughout the film at times. The way this actual sound effect is made was actually quite different to how other sound effects were made, as the Foley artist actually got one of his members to smear peanut butter all over their face and it got licked off by a hungry cow. After all the sounds and licks were recorded, the Foley artist would then pick which ones he'd like and start to enhance them. Then he would be able to mess around with the actual tone with all the licks and use his synclavier to actually do this. Then this was able to be used and actually linked to the actual clip, to which it made the actual sound effect of the licking sound, as you can see from the video I've shown. The second type of sound I'll be talking about is atmospheric sound, and the atmospheric sound I've chosen is rain. Rain can be used various ways in films. An example is just to show the weather and nothing else. Another reason is to symbolise feelings or anger, as this can be shown normally combined with thunder and lightning to give a bigger impact if something really bad is happening. How the actual sound rain is produced is very interesting, as most people just assume that they actually just record the actual sound of rain. However, there are tons of ways how rain can be sound. As a simple way is, is actually rice being poured onto paper, which is very simple. However, there are much more creative ways, including just having an orchestra of people using their own body to make the sound, including clapping, clicking their fingers, snapping their fingers, and a lot of different ways. It's just done that way, and it's a very interesting way. And I will try and include a small clip in the essay to show you an example of what I mean if you don't quite get it. Another way rain is used, which I think more of the more professional companies would actually use, is just using a hose and splashing it on various different surfaces to actually just get the sound and record that, as normally that's how they believe is going to get a more realistic sound compared to the other two I mentioned before. So yeah, that's the way the rain is created. The third piece of sound I'll be talking about is a piece of music scored, and the composer that scored the soundtrack I'll be analysing is Michael Giacchini. The soundtrack I'll be analysing is the soundtrack for the movies The Incredibles by Disney. The overall meaning and purpose of the soundtrack is to help create suspense in the film. It also helps create the action in the film, as it is a superhero film. The soundtrack needs to be quite entertaining and engaging for the audience to take it in, so obviously the soundtrack needs to have that energy and rhythm within it for people just to know what it is and what type of style it is. Obviously, once you hear this soundtrack, it will stick to your head, as if I were to show this to anyone, they would know, yeah, this is from The Incredibles, because it's a well-known and iconic soundtrack that people, once they hear instantly, it will stick to your head and you'll know instantly it's The Incredibles. How the soundtrack was produced was the composer obviously did a few mock-ups and tested it on the piano. After that, once he found a complete soundtrack he wanted, he got a huge orchestra to perform the sound. Obviously, the orchestra includes a lot of different instruments that can include very great sounds, including trumpets, trombones, violins, as you can see from the pictures and videos above. There's obviously someone leading the whole orchestra to tell which instrument to perform at which time, but overall I think the production of the soundtrack is very interesting, as it's one of my favourite soundtracks, as I love when I hear it. It kind of just gives me that memory of The Incredibles, and it just sticks your head. Obviously, when this soundtrack was made, it was obviously heavily thought, because as you can see from the video of the orchestra, there's so many different instruments that the composer obviously had to think of a lot of depth for the soundtrack. And once he did the mock-ups on the piano, the whole orchestra was the second part of the production. So I think that it was a great soundtrack overall, and I think it's one of the huge parts of success of The Incredibles, as without this soundtrack I couldn't think what The Incredibles would be without it. The last type of sound I will be analysing is dialogue, and I'll have two different types of dialogue. The first being from the film The Exorcist, where Father Karras is talking to a possessed Regan MacNeil. With this, it is a much more serious talk between them, as this is a serious matter in the film where the father is trying to exorcise the demon out of her, and he starts to throw holy water over her to try and get the demon to come out of her body and leave. Throughout the scene, the dialogue is kept at a very serious matter, and you can kind of have a real serious sense and feeling of matter of when the actual dialogue's being said, and it kind of tempts you in to think, what else could actually happen? Is something going to jump out and scare you? So it kind of engages you a lot for you to kind of listen into it. The second piece of dialogue I've chosen is from the film Rush Hour 3, where Carter and Lee go to a temple to investigate to try to find Soo Young's locker, where the dialogue scene comes up to where Carter tries to speak to the master, and he gets really confused as the master's name's actually you, spelled Y-U, and obviously he thinks he's taking a mick, so he says, "Who are you?" And you can see from the text, and then so you get the gist of it being a more comedic type of dialogue speech compared to The Exorcist, where it's more of a serious matter. Obviously there's a lot more different types of dialogue than just comedic and more serious. There's more emotional tones, and then there's more there's other more romantic type of tones of dialogue throughout. So there's loads of different ways that dialogue can be created to sustain a different type of tone. The way they produce the dialogue is that they will normally have a mic above the actors when they are performing the scene with dialogue in it. However, another way to record dialogue is if it wasn't appropriate for the scene, or it just didn't sound great, then they will re-record the actual dialogue in the post-production stage and add it in, as sometimes re-recording on set, you just won't have enough time and they will need to carry on with something else, so that you can actually re-record the speech in post-production stage. However, they will have to actually voice over, so it may be a lot harder to do that. I hope you enjoyed my video essay. Thank you for listening to it, and I hope you learned something new.